welcome us all here. So, as I was saying, the waiting for the other shoe there, and I found a nice old Andy Warhol graphic from the time before he really became an artist when he was still just working as an advertiser. And I thought it was an appropriate image for us. So we will be getting into our topics momentarily, but I wanted to just remind you that next month, we'll be talking to Dr. David Abulafia, and we're going to be talking about the Anchor study results. I don't know if you are familiar with them, if you've heard what has been happening in that realm, but he's also going to go through other AIDS Malignancy Consortium studies and talk about HIV and cancer in general with us. So you're all welcome to join us. That's going to be the Tuesday right before Thanksgiving, November 23rd, with David Abulafia. And I just realized I spelled his name wrong there. There's only one I at the end, not two. That is a bad typo on my part. So tonight's outline, very briefly, the agenda. I am going to have some follow-up from our meeting last month, where we were talking about renaming our clinic. I just have a little bit of follow-up for you all. And then after that, we're going to go into the ATI review. I'm going to kind of review with us some just basics about what an ATI is, just to get that all on, get us all on the same page with our thinking. And then I'm going to introduce our guests, and we're going to have our conversation tonight about what it's like to go through an ATI and ask all the questions that we might be burning to ask. So we're going to start with the follow-up, then I'm going to do a little review of ATIs, and then we'll go into our conversation. So if everyone is ready, I'll be going on, starting off with our follow-up. So if you could please mute your phones right now, like hit that mute button. It's either at the top or at the bottom. You'll see the microphone. It should be red with a slash through it for right now. So I wanted to thank you all, first of all, for contributing your thoughts last month, whether you did our survey or whether you actually participated in our meeting, talking about and sharing the ideas about changing our clinic's name. We found that your responses were very thoughtful and very insightful, and we're grateful that you took the time to share them. Again, just to remind you that we have some restrictions on what we could actually choose as a name. And we're going to go forward, though, with the idea. And in fact, one of the common threads was everyone wanting us to keep some sort of tie with HIV and AIDS while focusing on wellness aspects of the research that we conduct in our units. And so we're going to... let me skip through this. We have a new name that we wanted to test with you, and I have a second survey that I was going to send out to you all, and I'll do that once we get our chat talking, because I didn't get a chance to copy the link. Okay, hold on. Can everyone mute, please? Yes, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So that's the follow-up portion, and there's the link, but I'll be giving that to you. So right now, I'd love to do a very brief review of what we're talking about when we mention the word ATI. And so first of all, what is an ATI? And an ATI stands for Analytic Treatment Interruption. That's where the ATI comes from. And it's basically as a part of a research study that's usually cure-directed or cure-related. And it's basically when we ask a participant to pause their HIV medications. And usually we mean that it's not just taking a holiday, but it's going to be some sort of observed pause. And whether that's a doctor or the researcher or a healthcare team, someone's going to be following this person. And the implication is that the clinical status and the safety labs of this person are going to be really important. So keeping their viral load, their CD4 counts monitored closely and frequently. And that usually means they're going to have weekly visits, maybe even every twice a week for giving samples so we can make sure that their viral load is still undetectable. And it's going to remain important for people to stay in contact with their primary care provider during that time. So that's what an ATI is. But there also is a point that I wanted to bring up, and that's for any of the researchers or the research-minded on here, that we may want to think when we're designing these ATI trials about how you can involve the PCPs, the primary care providers, to whatever degree that might be agreeable to the PCPs. But it's just one of the ideas that is coming up in some of the research that we've conducted with some of the healthcare providers here in Seattle, the idea of keeping them abreast of all of the things that have been happening in the trial, especially for an ATI. So if medications work effectively, why do we want to pause them? So this is just giving you some rationale for that. So remember the old HIV reservoir, that HIV that's hidden in the different cells in your body. And the goal of most of these cure studies is to either reduce that reservoir or train your immune system somehow to control that reservoir. And so right now, we don't have any way to measure that reservoir being decreased or an increase in your immune function. In other words, the only way that we can really tell if something has happened is by taking people off their medication and seeing if there has been a decrease in the reservoir, seeing if the virus comes back, or how long it takes for the virus to come back. So it's kind of a primitive way to be able to tell, but it's the only way that we have. But what can we learn about things from ATIs? Well, there's lots that we can learn. One of the first things that we can learn is this person a post-treatment controller, or it could also be a post-intervention controller? So in other words, someone may have been controlling their HIV just because of taking HIV medicines. And once we take them off HIV medicines, they still control. We could also see if an intervention obviously has worked. We can see if the intervention's been able to decrease the reservoir. Is the immune system still able to control the virus with whatever intervention has been given? And we also will probably learn the effects of the intervention on a participant's health, as well as their ability to control or eliminate HIV. But one of the things to keep in mind is that there's a lot of uncertainty about the potential risks for a person on treatment interruptions. And so while this is more and more becoming a popular way of going, we're not sure of all the risks, but there are some hypotheticals that we know could potentially happen. So for participants, they would lose their undetectable status. And so undetectable equaling untransmittable, that is a very big deal because you are able to transmit the virus. The CD4 decreased potential, the increased inflammation and the health effects that can come as a result of that. You could actually experience the acute retroviral symptom when you're feeling sick when you first seroconvert. And there's also just anxiety about not knowing how long this is going to last for you, if you are remaining undetectable for longer, and there might even be social stigmas that you're exposed to. So those are some of the potential risks. There's also risks to people's partners. So there's a risk of the sexual partner or partners of this person acquiring HIV from while they're experiencing their HIV rebound before it's caught and they can be put back onto medicines. So this is also a note just that the risks are directly related to ATI duration and the highest level or the peak of increased HIV. So in other words, the most virus that you let it get to during the rebound before you get the person back onto medications. There are some specific challenges to ATIs to keep in mind for the participants as well as for the partners of participants. So there's difficulties disclosing HIV status, difficulty disclosing the fact that you're participating in ATI, also counseling that uses sort of generic or vague language. Your partners will be at risk, avoid having sex, things like that, that really are not going to help people be able to manage their risks effectively. Partners are not technically a part of the study, and so they're not recognized in law or medicine as participants. And some of the other challenges is like there's no direct information provided on HIV risk reduction and the challenges that they might have understanding any of the information received. So when you're going from participants to partners of participants, there's going to be further challenges to that. And the reason that this is a concern is that not in a cure-related trial, but in terms of therapeutic vaccine trials, we've had transmissions occur when people have been on ATIs. In France, there was a male-to-female transmission, and in Spain, there was a male-to-male transition. And during these times, PrEP was not available during either of those studies. And it just kind of shows us that indeed mitigating the transmission risk for people who are partners of participants is going to be important. And so we feel as a community that making every attempt to proactively ensure that PrEP and PEP are available and accessible to all the partners of people is at least somehow attempted, although it may not be feasible for a study to provide the PrEP or the PEP. But having something worked out as a study team for these transmission possibilities is key. And just to let you know, like we wouldn't know about cure if it wasn't for the first sort of treatment interruption related to cure, which was Timothy Ray Brown's. And he stopped his medication on the day of the transplant. And so we really wouldn't know if he was cured, if he was still on medicine. We would have never have had that voila moment. So that's how sort of important treatment interruptions are. And I wanted to just point that out. And another friend of ours here in Seattle, this is Gary Steinkall, who was known as Patient B of the Boston patients. And he was the first one who came out from that study. And he was the one who really went a very long time, longer than normal for people, and had enough time to start thinking that maybe he indeed was cured by his bone marrow stem cell transplant until his virus came back. So he actually got to go on a roller coaster ride. And he talked about that here with us in Seattle. And in fact, it's recorded, and I'll put the link for you all in the chat, but it's a great little event that we did with him and the researcher that he did the study with. And they talk about the experiences of having sort of been cured and then not cured and what that leads to, which brings us to our guests for the night, Tom and William. Now, before we get to our talking, I just wanted to stop sharing my screen here. And I wanted to encourage you all to go to your view section and make it a gallery view, because we're going to be looking at each other, I'm hoping. So if you would take a look at that and put it into the gallery mode. And let me see. I'm going to try to pin you. Nope, that didn't work, did it? All right. And if you want, please feel free to turn on your video just so we can see all of your lovely faces. If you don't want to be seen, that is also your choice, but it is trying to create a little bit of a feeling that we're in the same room together. I find that that's really important in conversations like this. And we're going to have two of us who are going to be talking in a moment, but I just want to make sure everyone has a chance to, if they want to show us themselves. And so we've got a pretty big group here. I'm trying to pin you, Tom, and pin you. There's the pin. So Tom, I'm pinning you, and now I'm going to look for William. Where is Blondie? There you are.
I've been pinned, Michael. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm going to add a pin on. There we go. So everyone should see featured both Tom and William, and I wanted to give each of you a chance to introduce yourselves. So William, why don't we start with you? Tell us who you are and where you live and what's going on.
Hi, I'm William Carter. I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I am chairman of the Beat HIV CAB, and I have been chair for just about a year, but co-chair for going on. Been in a position for a while. I have been involved in a ATI trial since I'm taking the helm of leadership there. And I also work in the community and work for the University of Pennsylvania as a recruiter, recruiting for HIV and AIDS testing in both positive and non-positive manners, going door to door and into doctors' offices. And recently, it's been going door to door, working with other organizations, bringing up voters' rights, and then handing out my flyers to people as well. So doing a double packing punch there.
Awesome. Sweet. And Tom?
Great. Thank you, Michael. Let's see. I'm joining you from Rockville, Maryland. And I guess my connection to these kinds of studies would be that over the past 20 years or more that I've lived with HIV, I've participated in more than a dozen different HIV-related clinical studies. Some of those have been observational studies, such as monitoring the potential impact of neurocognitive impairment over a period of time. At this point, the study is funded for 10 years, but perhaps will be funded longer as time goes on. I've participated in several interventional studies, some of them directly related to managing HIV-related comorbidities. a study of the potential benefits of statins for people who are taking antiretroviral therapy. I've also participated in a phase 1 trial of a candidate vaccine against the Ebola virus to make sure that it was safe in people living with HIV before it could be tested in larger trials, particularly in Africa, where we all know that a number of the people who are at risk for Ebola may also be living with HIV. And of course, I participated in a trial that involved ATI that was started in late 2019, and we can talk more about that when you're ready.
Yeah. So, and that's great. So you were in a study in you said 18?
It started in 2019.
Okay.
This was an HIV cure-directed trial, clinical trial, a phase 1, actually a combination phase 1/2 trial of a combination of monoclonal antibodies to determine if they would be capable of allowing me to, my body, my immune system, to control HIV without the help of antiretroviral therapy. So this particular study involved 2 ATIs, during which I would be monitored with lab work and physical exam or clinic visits every 2 weeks. And I started the second of the 2 ATIs on February 4th, 2020, which, if we all think back, this was just a few weeks prior to the COVID-19 pandemic becoming a big concern internationally, as well as here in the United States. But I had been paying attention to reports from China through the medical journals and to a lesser extent through the mainstream media. It wasn't yet really a big deal. But I was concerned that it might become one here. So I basically, as a precaution, decided that I would, as much as possible, self-isolate at home during my ATI for reasons. Number one, I wanted to keep myself safe. And number two, I wanted to make sure that we could actually complete the ATI safely so that we could learn as much as possible. I didn't want to miss the chance for us to learn what we could learn.
So let me just rephrase again. So you had 2 ATIs during the trial. You were given an intervention, and then you went on a treatment interruption, and then you had you went back on treatment?
Yes. Again? So after the first treatment interruption, I went back on treatment until my medication brought my HIV back to undetectable. I had to remain on that for a minimum of 3 months or 12 weeks.
Got it.
And then we started the second ATI. And the reason or the objective of the second ATI was to see if that initial ATI and the subsequent treatment afterwards, if that had allowed my immune system to basically learn or be trained or assisted in controlling the HIV during the second ATI without medication.
Good. So there may not have been as much expectation around the first ATI, but they were really looking at that second one to see if your immune system had enough time by that point to have some sort of effect. That's what it was about measuring.
And the first ATI basically gave a baseline. So we were able to see, for me as an individual, how long was my immune system able to manage and control the HIV undetectable levels without medication. So we knew from that first ATI what my body could do by itself. And then we were going to compare, or we did compare, what we did after the intervention in ATI number 2.
That makes sense. Got it. Cool. So William, I wanted to hold on, Tom. Let me get to William. So William, I wanted to also find out, what is your trial that you were a part of? Are you still a part of the trial? Is it still going on?
I am still a part of it. I became detectable about the end of September. So I had to go back on my medicines, and I'm almost back to being undetectable, but I am still part of the trial. Cool. And also I'm testing a device that Corrine is heading up called the TASO device, which is a viral load tester, which I believe is a godsend, and I really hope it comes from out of the trial stages onto the market.
So
but I can tell you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a little tiny device to me. It looks like a little Lego. That's like, if they had to say something negative about it, that would be it, because you really would have to keep it from children, because it looks just like
a Lego
to me, a Lego. And I have grandkids, so they're used to seeing my pills and not touching that. But that little device catches their attention because of the red little knob. But it takes all of 6 minutes to do. I just go to a FedEx or a Walgreens or CVS and I drop it off with them. I get 20% shopping off while I'm there. I get peace of mind the entire time while I was on the trial. I did 14 months without any medication. So I think I did fantastic.
Wow.
And the only side effect I had from that, I suffered up until like a week or two. I was depressed from not being able to complete it, and then going so long without taking any medicine whatsoever.
Wow.
I know we only take one pill, but I hadn't taken it in 14 months.
That's a long time.
And I can actually say, for me personally, it saved me a lot of heartache, because I was involved at that time in a new relationship. And because I wasn't able, I'm not saying I wasn't able to, I chose not to. And my partner, he chose not to come and ask questions. He wanted to ask me. But I said, no, if you want to know something, I don't want to get blamed for anything from anybody. I'm here with the professionals. You can ask them. They invite you in. There's not a problem. But when it dissolved, I didn't have that emotional detachment, like I passed something on to him, even though he was positive himself. But we didn't change each other's strand, and I had peace of mind. And I eventually did, become detectable. So I'm saying it saved me heartache, and it truly, being involved, maybe because I chaired the groups, I got to go to a lot of different meetings and working firsthand, hand on hand with the doctors and the medical training staff that they had there in their labs. I felt like, I tell people, I felt like I was the president. I had my own Camp David. I had my own medical center. Anything and everything I wanted, I had. I was able to speak with my doctor's partners. I had 9 doctors who actually took our flyers and spread them around at 5 different hospitals because they were able to come in and talk to me, because they were used to me being for a long time in the hospital. Many of you may not know that I'm disabled. And before my leg was amputated, I lived in the hospital for almost 14 years. 3 weeks out of the month, I was in the hospital. So going from that to not seeing me but once every 3 months, and then twice a year because they are getting my labs, I was like over the moon. So having to go back in and having my doctor question me, it set me, depressed, but my doctor was on top of it. He never lost sight. And thankfully, my doctor is also a professor, so he also teaches.
Oh, yes.
So that was, I counted that as a blessing. And I go to a teaching hospital, here in the state of Pennsylvania, the Lincoln All Medical Center. So I was in a win-win situation, and I'm still in that situation. And it has caused me to be a lot more vocal. And I'm finding that when I speak with people about the trials or different trials that are going on, once they find out that when I share that I'm positive, it just tears down walls, and they want to ask you a bunch of questions because I'm not that test dummy that they think that's out there. It just tears down the stigmatism. My granddaughter shares it up and down the street with other people. So it's a win-win situation. It can be a very positive, informative thing if that's what, for, as I tell people, for my granddaughter who's 10, this is her normalcy. She's only ever known me as this. That's all she knows is Pop-Pop as having a blood disorder, and he's doing this and he's testing this, and he goes knocks on people's doors or goes in the doctor's office. So it makes her proud. So it just tears down a lot of things, and it brings questions. So it makes people want to know. And then because of this trial, I was able to go back to work during the pandemic. It's been very well for me doing this. I was offered a position with the University of Penn. So now I get paid to recruit people for different studies about this. So it's still a business. I thrive with it. I just don't live with it.
Right.
But the whole experience for me, if I could do it again, I would, as Tom said, I'm going to bring that up to him in January, because it'll be 3 months since my numbers are better each and every week when I go get them checked. So I'm hoping to be undetectable by December, the way things look to me that I should be.
Great. So William, I had a question about your study. What was the intervention that you were given before the ATI, before you had that?
I was on an interferon study.
Okay.
And I was given 2 mystery antibodies. Treatments for, I think it was 2, maybe 3 months. Kareem will be able to answer that. I can't really remember right now, but I think it was 2 months.
Okay.
But for a 15-minute drip and then 45 minutes just to make sure I was okay.
Right.
I only experienced one of the side effects, and that was one time. And it actually happened while I was at a meeting. So I still got to do my work going at meetings like this. I was cold for like a half hour. So they gave me some warm blankets.
And then everything was cold.
Everything was fine. So being able to share that with you all as I'm doing now, but actually show them what was going on to the study, throughout the study live as it was happening to me. That was immeasurable for anyone, that they could share, to share my story, that, if you are a member of ACAB, be an active participant. Don't just come sit there, because I don't want you there, at least not at the beat. If you're just not going to sit there and don't participate, we're not the cab for you. We want everyone to have an opinion.
All right. So on that note, I just wanted to point out to everybody that you have your reaction buttons here, which you can be giving thumbs up, you can be sending hearts, but also you can raise and lower your hand. And if you have a question that you'd like to chime in with, please just raise your hand. It'll pop you to the top of the queue and I'll be able to see it much better than seeing it in the chat. So if you put it in the chat, I may miss it because I'm tracking too much, but I wanted to make sure that we all just know. So if you want to take a second for taking a look, everyone, for your reaction buttons, you can see there I have my hand up. I'm also clapping, and I'm going to lower my hand. But Manuel did ask a question in the chat, and it was specific to William, and it was about this device that you were describing. He wanted to know, did you experience any discomfort when using that Tasso device?
I would rather use the Tasso device than have a bee sting me. It's very minimal. It's nothing like getting if those of you who are diabetic or have ever done a finger stick, it's nothing like that at all. You don't even know it's on. It just sticks to your arm. They use very good glue, sticking self-adhesive on your arm. You just stand up. And for me, because I have very bad veins. I got the exercise doing mine, so I did a lot of walking just to get the blood flowing for that 6 minutes. So there, the best way I could say is minimum pain, no pain. I would have to tell you no, but I would rather have that than pull the Band-Aid off because I'm hairy. So that hurt worse taking the Band-Aid off.
And Kate, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I came in late. What exactly is he talking about? What device?
It's a little device called a Tasso device that was a way for him to be able to get his viral load checked much quicker, it seemed, than having to go into the office. He could go to like a FedEx place. Is that true, William?
No, I do it in the privacy of my home, and I would drop it off there. I don't know if Karine would like to, she just posted up on there.
Yeah, she's posted the link for everyone
but if
again.
Karine would want to talk about it a little bit, I don't mind sharing time with her, because this is a very important device to me and to the beat that Karine is also the head of.
Did you want to unmute yourself and chime in?
Sorry for Karine putting you on the spot.
No worries. So we're actually, William has been the true spokesperson for the device. We're looking at acceptability from both the community perspective and the user perspective in the context of an ATI. So we're just wrapping up the community piece. We did interviews and focus groups and a nationwide survey that several of you actually participated in. So we're currently finalizing data analysis for that one. And then we are almost done with looking at acceptability from the user perspective. And we think that will also inform implementation of the device in the context of these ATI trials. So maybe we should do a separate webinar, Michael.
Probably.
We're just talking about this.
Stuck under the thing.
Yeah, no, but that's what we were talking about, Kate. So thanks for asking. I know you did come in late, but that's what he was talking about, a device. And so, okay, Kate, just to get you brought up to speed, Tom was in a study that had 2 ATIs. He did the first one, and then they waited till his viral load came down again, and they did a second one. And William did 1 ATI, but his went for 14 months. And Tom didn't get to finish his second one because of the coronavirus lockdown. And so let's go back to that, Tom, a little bit. I wanted to ask you about that. So you never really got to complete your ATI?
Well, complete, no. I continued in the ATI for 9 weeks. And my viral load did rebound or begin to rebound, but it sort of stabilized at a low level.
Okay.
And unfortunately, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the PI and I guess the Safety Monitoring Committee decided to suspend the trial to make sure that everybody would be safe. And so the trial was suspended, and then eventually it was terminated. So that was quite disappointing for me. Similar to what William mentioned, you know, I really wanted to make sure that we learned as much as we can from the ATI. And as I mentioned earlier, I was self-isolating at home. I was safe. I voiced that, I shared that with my study team and told them that I was all in to continue the ATI for as long as we needed to continue it, to learn as much as we can so that nobody else would have to do this again in the future.
Right.
You know, I was already in it. I'm safe. Let's do it. So, and when the decision was made to suspend the trial, of course, I understand that there were other concerns, you know, bigger than just me. But I really do think something for the investigators who are on the call, something that's important to consider in future trials is that in the case of particularly something as impactful as an ATI, you know, we're asking participants to stop their treatment for the purpose of the trial. In those cases, I think it's really important that if circumstances change and there's a need to make some sort of a significant change in the study, in the trial, that there be some formal mechanism in the protocol for the PI and the investigators to consult, to speak directly with the participants who are in ATI, who are undergoing the ATI at that moment, to hear their thoughts on whether or not we should continue, and to at least consider those thoughts direct before making a decision. And I know most protocols, all protocols, have mechanisms to consult with the IRB in these circumstances. They have a mechanism to consult with the safety monitoring committee. They have a mechanism in many cases to consult with their CAB. And those are all important, they're all necessary,
right?
But they're not sufficient. Particularly in these early studies where we're talking about small groups of participants. In my case, there were only 8 of us who had been infused. I think it's critically important to have that direct communication because people are making a significant sacrifice to participate, and a suspension or termination of the trial really changes the terms under which the participants had consented to participate.
So Tom, do you feel that you were heard as a study participant in terms of saying that you wanted to be continued and that was being weighed in the decisions? Do you feel like that was happening, or are you not certain, or it was too opaque for you to really know what was going on for the decisions?
I'm certain that my case manager, so the members of my immediate study team, the ones that I dealt with on a regular basis,
right,
they all were very well aware of my thoughts and the fact that I was all for continuing. I am not at all sure. I'm sure that the PI heard that from them. I'm sure they communicated it. I have no idea, and honestly don't have confidence that was considered in the larger context of the decision.
I hear you.
I don't have any way to know.
Right.
And
can I add something?
Like William,
sure. Hold on, William. Go ahead, Tom.
And like William, I suffered unexpectedly after the decision to suspend the trial, and they had me restart my medications. I really struggled for a little bit emotionally, psychologically, without. I hadn't recognized how invested I had become in this study and in the success of what we were doing, and that it really took me by surprise. I was fine, but it was a bit of a surprise for me. So I'm sorry. Somebody had a question.
Well, William, go ahead. You wanted to add something.
I just wanted to say that I actually completed the trial that I was on. They have somebody who, as far as I know, who I was in an extension. I only did one extension, but we have somebody actively in like their second or third extension, which I'm super duper excited about. But the fact is that what helped me along with getting with that, each and every week, the person that I dealt with, we went over that consent form. So each week, just to make sure that I was mentally stable and I knew exactly why I was there, we went over. He asked me questions, I asked him questions. And the fact that he would call me to see how I was and to check to make sure, for like 2 days after a session, it just added a personal touch. So like Tom said, I wish the investigators would even have just came in one time. And I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Tobias, who was over the study. He came in and treated me one time. So I gave him an earful while I had his attention. But to grab it and I like to encourage all the PIs, don't stop dreaming, because your dreams give me my reality and it gives me a chance to dream. But the only thing is I'm going to continue to state every chance I get, stop inviting me to the table. I don't want to come. I want in the kitchen where you're cooking. I want to help you come up with everything that you're doing, because I don't care how smart you are. You still don't know how your device works or how your pill works without me. I have the key. So in order for you to get into your kitchen, let me unlock the door with you. And we can, this stuff could come up and probably be solved if it wasn't a us and them. And that's what, I'm gonna say my team because I'm with the beat. That is what they do. And I go to so many different meetings, and we had a meeting yesterday, and I mentioned, Bill, for those of us who chair cabs, you have to find a way to encourage your cab members, especially your community members. Don't just sit there, get involved, come to a meeting like this, because you don't know what's going on. How can you speak on something that you know absolutely nothing about? To me, that's throwing things back 20 years ago when I first was diagnosed. So doing that and having a heads up, so when you are speaking to people, when they hear that you're thriving with it, I've been positive 22 years and I've never been sick because I take my medicine, because somebody went before me and did it. So I always say that I took a piece of Tim Brown with me. I didn't get the pleasure of meeting him. COVID wiped that out for us. So I would have had the pleasure of meeting him. But, he didn't survive much longer after the pandemic because he was supposed to come to Philadelphia. But look at all those people. Look at where we were 20 years ago when people were taking over 100 pills a day. I'm complaining about going back on one pill. But that's a good complaint if you think about it.
It is.
To have that.
So we have some questions. Rachel, I see your hands up and I see Bill's up after Rachel. So Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, I just, I wanted to really, thank you for speaking about your experience of the trial being stopped. I'm one of the investigators here in Seattle, and I'm not entirely sure which study you were on, and I'm not one of the investigators on it, but I really, admire how much you spoke out about wanting to continue it and the importance of your contribution and the fact that you felt like, sort of the amount of yourself that you'd invested to that point, and not taking that for granted. And I'm really sorry to hear about that. I definitely will take your words with me, and I don't know if it's any consolation in terms of you being heard or feeling like you were heard, but I know that many studies, and I don't know if Dr. Collier has more comments on this, but many of the studies were stopped actually by DAIDs, sort of at the very top of the hierarchy, and there may not have been anything that was anybody's individual decision, whether the investigators or local people. I don't think any of us have ever been in this situation before, and I don't think what happened last spring was ever, had ever been experienced before. And so I hope that it won't ever happen again, that there'll be sort of this unilateral shutting down of things. But I think it's a really important lesson that we should think about in the case that, for example, there's safety concerns or efficacy concerns about the drug, and thinking about closing a study for maybe a more repeatable way, something that is more likely to happen again in the future.
And
maybe Dr. Collier knows more
I
about
wanted
sort
to
of
ask
from the top
Tom
of days what was happening.
I wanted to ask Tom a question about whether he knew sort of when they described the study was shutting down, whose decision was it? Do you have any sense?
No. So I suspect that it was probably a DAID's decision. And thank you, Rachel, for your words. And realistically, I'm fine. As I told Michael, I'm sort of a serial participant in HIV research from multiple perspectives. But as a participant, I'm a serial participant, and I understand. I get the fact that this was the first time that we were dealing with this kind of a global pandemic. If I imagine, I think it's quite likely that if I were in those shoes to make the decision, I would have made the same decision. I'm bringing up the point only because I think it's important to think now in advance. How do we build into the structure of our protocols some mechanism to make sure that in future studies, if the unexpected happens, which it might, what is the mechanism to make sure that we reach back out to the individual participants? I've been in these, I view myself as sort of a member of the team, and I'm not upset or offended or anything else. But I want to make sure that future participants, when we scale up these kinds of trials, that future participants who may be participating for their very first time have a different experience. That's all.
Mm.
I think it's important that when we speak about this from Tom and my perspective, I've been in numerous different studies, but this was the very first time I did a long-term effect. That this study, it led me into doing recruiting because there's so many different levels. But like I think this, as Tom says, opens the door for us to reevaluate and things that we never thought of. We've always built in safety mechanisms, but how do we handle if there's another type of pandemic, or the mental capacity of a person afterwards? Because I feel as though that our team here at the University of Penn, that they were worried about me. And they did check on me, and by my case management receiving weekly reports on how I was doing, it let them know. So I was able to get help going through mine. So if it's built in there, maybe as Tom was saying, and as I said earlier, talk to us more. The same way you speak to your colleagues, speak to your community advisory board in the same way. It may take us a little longer to catch on, but if you speak to us in terms that we can understand, speak to us and not at us, your dreams keep me alive. I'm hoping that, I get to see my granddaughter, walk down the aisle one day and graduate college. I didn't think when she was born 10 years ago that I would be here, but I'm here because other people took the time out to get involved in trials. And just because you may want to do it, it doesn't mean you qualify for it. And it doesn't mean that you can't participate in another way. You don't actually have to do the one particular trial, but to help out,
right?
You can help by advertising or just speaking of it, or going
or becoming
to
a cab member.
Right.
Bill, I know you've been patiently waiting there, so let's hear your question.
No problem. Thank you very much. And first off, to William and Tom, sincere thanks for taking part in an ATI study, because you're both very correct. We all, those of us that are long-term survivors, really, owe our health to people who have participated in studies. So thank you both for doing it. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. My question, and I'm glad to see that there are investigators on here. Both of you are on studies that seem to have been similar to the ATI study that I was on, a smaller study, because I think this my question sort of applies to a smaller study. I'd be interested in knowing if, since the end of your study, has anybody from the study team reached out to you to say, how are you doing? Are you still healthy? Are you still okay? Because when William has talked about being depressed, and I felt a little bit depressed after my study, because we really do, as you guys have done, risked a lot, and then it's over, and it's kind of like boom. And I mean, I understand if you have 500 people on a study, but my study was 14 people. You said yours was 8 or 9, William. I don't know how many it was on yours. But it would seem to me, and this is really, for the community and for the investigators on there, if we want to keep getting people on studies and different people, and you know, the people that we need to have on studies, a good way to make people feel a little bit better at it is to reach out and say, after 6 months, are you still okay? Is there anything that you need? You know, you went off your meds. I mean, we hear, I mean, for what, 20 years, never miss a dose, have your pills, take your pills, same time, same food, you know, yada, yada, yada. And now all of a sudden it's don't take your pills, and then it's over. So I would just be interested to know if you know, if it's, you know, me that feels that way because I'm, you know, kind of touchy, or do you guys also feel that way? And again, thank you very, very much for participating in these usually important studies. And Michael, thank you for organizing this. It's a really fascinating discussion.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Bill, for joining us. And if people didn't catch on, Bill also has participated in an ATI trial. So thank you, Bill, just as much as you were thanking William and Tom. I just wanted to thank you as well, just to keep that. So go ahead, guys. He asked you a question. Your turn to answer.
I can say for me, I don't, as far as I know, I only know one other person who was a participant in the study. It's only because she was a fellow CAB member. But as far as I know, I just seen her yesterday. And here in Philadelphia, they do check on you. You know, that was a main concern of them. That's one of the things that I appreciate, because I haven't been back into the office in 3 weeks. I'm not due until next week. But I got a phone call asking me, do I need anything? How are you feeling? How is your life going? Are you sad? Because that's some of the things that I expressed that I was, but I believe that I actually was heard. And I believe when that consent form, I've seen the type of work that goes into it. So I actually knew it because, you know, I got to read it before, you know, before I did the study, to when we were making revisions to it. But it's very important to use that tool. I'm going to call it a double-edged sword on the positive side. Because of that helps keep you aware. And if you all think, most people who participate in trials, they're healthy from Jump Street. Those are people who know their numbers, who know where they want to be at. That is why it's important that I'm not apologizing, and I'm not speaking for the beat here. I'm speaking exclusively for William Carter. I want to stick it to the NIH every chance I get. They need to soften them rules. Think about what we go through. And I invite anybody who is on the NIH to donate 40% of their income for the next 20 years and see how their cost of living and their life goes for the work that they do, because what they do is very important to do that. But I believe that the more that you involve the community in it, because you do have a good quality of crop that who actually will participate than those who are out there, not unless you're doing an opioid study, but for important studies that I'm doing, I'm not on anything, you know, except for my med that I take, my Triumet. But that's important that I went, as Bill said, I went 20 years without missing a dose, never missed a dose at all. So I was able to participate. So I'm going to call myself a quality patient because that's what I was. You know, I'm not a consumer. I am a patient at that point. So if that's what you want, a quality patient to come in and participate in it, think about what you're doing. Put yourself in my shoes. I'll invite you into my kitchen, but they don't want to come. But I have invited them into my kitchen.
That's cool. And by the way, William, I wanted to say I love your little phrase. You didn't want to be invited to the table. You wanted to be invited to the kitchen. I thought it was a little spin and gets to a point that I think we all can understand. Tom, how about your answer to the question about after the trial? Did they get in touch with you at all 6 months after?
So after I restarted my ARTs, my medications, I was followed regularly. So I had regular lab work and regular visits with clinical exam. So that continued for 3 months or longer after I had returned to undetectable. And then my individual participation in the trial was over. I did get calls from my case manager a couple of times afterwards, including maybe 6 months later, with the announcement that the trial had been officially terminated, that that they were not going to resume or continue it. So, but I do think I think maybe for a conversation on another day, I think that there are some new ways to think about engaging community that could be important for the future of this kind of work. And I would love to be a part of those discussions with some of the interesting and experienced people on this call and other groups like this.
Great. Christine, you've been patiently waiting with your question, so I'd like for you to unmute and ask it.
Okay. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I heard everybody and about the ATIs and everything, and like I commented, I'm very proud and to be a part of all of this and to hear everybody's story. But you know, my situation is just a little tad different. I tried to do the studies, but
we lost you.
She's on a notebook. Give her a minute. She'll be right back.
Okay.
She's just not aware of it.
Okay.
It'll pop back
can
on.
get involved in.
Christine, repeat that. Christine, you went out, so repeat what you just said.
Okay.
You dropped.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I did try to do ATI studies, and I think it was about 5 years ago. Actually, they offered me a study back in University of Penn when I was like 3 years, when I first found out I was positive. 3 years into it, because I was in a relationship, and the person I was with stayed negative the entire relationship, 17 years. Without protection or by their choice. So they thought there was some kind of R gene thing going on that they may not be able to get it. But because he wouldn't part, like they wanted us both to, so I couldn't get that person. But for me, when I wanted to finally do this, because of the other medications, and like William was saying, he got depressed and stuff, I take antidepressants. So therefore, it exempted me from a lot of trials, which was very sad, because I really wanted to do this, like just even if it's 18 months or whatever, just not have to take that medicine. It's a constant reminder every night that, you know, hey, this is what you did 20 years ago. And it's a shame, but I did just see on the television they're starting to do commercials for the actual shot now. Right. That shot that I think it's twice a month. I'm not sure, but I mean, even that's an improvement.
Right. Currently, it's 2 shots, 1 in each butt cheek, once a month. They're looking at maybe twice a month because there's data that shows that you might be able to go for.
I mean, every other month.
Yeah, so every other month. But it would be. It's 1 treatment, but it's actually 2 different shots at the same time, or one after the other, not at the same time, literally. But yeah, so that you're right. Long-acting treatments are coming along and changing it. And Christine, so many people are like you who have had all these things happen during their course with their living and thriving with HIV that exclude them from trials. And they get excited about a cure-related trial and they want to give back. So I've heard many stories like yours here in Seattle of similar people who, when they finally get to go and they think something's right for them and they find out that the cancer that they had 10 years ago maybe still this excludes them, or maybe some of the other medicines that they need to take for another health condition will exclude them. So you're not alone in those sorts of feelings. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. We were talking a lot about feelings after the trial. I was curious about hearing about people's feelings. What made you want to get involved in the trial? What was that feeling that brought you up and made you consider getting involved in the trial in the first place?
My sister called me a hypocrite.
Oh.
My sister's one of my biggest supporters. She's asked, I'm blessed to have her and her girlfriends. We normally get together on Fridays and we go over to her house, and it's Ask Will Day, or whatever group I've gone to. So I go over the different questions and things we went over with them. So she asked me, well, why aren't you doing this trial? You're asking people to go off their meds. Why aren't you doing it? What gives you the right to ask them to do that? And you don't even know if you can do it. I said, well, I know I'm not going to qualify for it. And I thought I wasn't, but there I did. And then Timothy Ray Brown died. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. You've lost your mind. Not doing it. And then once again, there's my little big sister. Oh no, you're doing this. If you can sit up there and you chair, at the time I was co-chair, you can't sit there because you have a megaphone. Now people are listening and watching what you're saying. So how dare you not even try to do it? And I'm so grateful that I listened to her to do that. I don't know if Bill and Tom, I feel like I'm a trailblazer, and I'm able to be healthy enough to realize that I am. So being a part of this, seeing people who are, years older than me, who have 35 years or more, still living and thriving, not existing, but thriving, still being active in what they do. Why wouldn't I do it? It's liberating. For me, it is.
Wow. Tom, how about you?
Yeah, I think in a similar fashion, my main motivation was really to pay it forward, if you will, to sort of gratitude to the people who came before us and who participated in the trials that led to the medications that keep all of us healthy. And wanting to pay that forward to the next generation. I know from my involvement with CABS and in other methods, with the Martin Delaney collaboratories, with the Believe collaboratory, with Hope. So I'm familiar with what's going on in the field of cure research, and I know that participants are needed. My study team, for this particular study, I participated at the NIH Clinical Center, and the study team there, with whom I participated in a number of studies over the years, they had asked me to participate. To your point, Christine, this particular trial that I participated in was my plan B. It was not my first choice. So I took time to, when I got to the point where I thought that it made sense for me, I was ready and wanted to participate in a cure-directed trial. I had picked out a gene therapy trial that I thought was really interesting, and where I knew that my participation would make a big difference, because there was something they were having difficulty getting participants, but it was something that was interesting to me. And I didn't qualify to participate because I was having issues with blood pressure at the time. And so this other study was one that my study team had asked me to participate in. And so I basically did this for that. I researched it and understood what I was getting into and was comfortable with all that and felt it was meaningful, but I essentially did this because they needed it.
Wow.
Can I
sure, go ahead.
Just to touch on what Tom and Christine said,
Sure.
Having meetings like this, even if you are not able to participate, just having the conversation. Think back 10 or 15 years ago, it would have only been 2 people on this call. You would have been on your own, you've been on your phone. But to see as many faces here being able to talk about it. So when you speak to other people, you can say, well, call Tom, call Will, call whoever you need to. But there are people who out there are doing it. It's not 50 years ago where, you know, where people were misrepresented. It's just not that way anymore. But putting yourself out there, and even if you are not able to participate, you talking about it and being a part of it, you are participating. So you're a hero too.
Awesome. I like those feelings that you guys have shared. We are approaching our time to end. We still got lots of time left, but I wanted to let everyone know if you've been sitting on a question that you want to ask, now's the time to raise your hand, or if you don't want to raise it, at least put it into the chat and then direct my attention so I can then speak it for you. But we have questions here. Kate, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's not regarding what they were talking about. It's regarding research studies recently.
Okay.
I've stepped out to go to a couple research studies, but due to certain things, I have not been eligible for them too. Why are we doing studies that are not addressed to the population that is surviving this disease?
A good question. And Gary, I see you clapping there too. Does someone want to take a stab at that?
Would you restate the question? You mean why are studies being conducted for which people are not eligible, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a population. We're also trying to find out certain things like the injectable, how it's going to work and everything else. But we have a population, a general population of the elderly, the longtime survivors. These studies recently are not geared towards those people. And that's most of the population with HIV versus besides the recently new diagnosed, which I don't know what the rates are on that currently off the top of my head.
Right.
But I'm just kind of curious why these research studies aren't directing towards the population that has survived this.
Right. And I hear your complaints, Kate. And one of the things that I would just point out to you is oftentimes it's safety reasons. In other words, when you're trying out something in a new way, or it's a new molecule, or it's a new intervention of some sort, you're trying to do it as safely as possible because we're dealing with human beings and their lives. And so anything that might put someone in danger, or if we don't know what the effects are, they err on the side of protecting you. So I know it sounds like it's keeping you out of the study, but actually what it's really doing is looking out for you so you don't have something bad happen because of your participation. So there's a lot of those exclusion criteria are really about protection, even though it might not feel like protection when you hear that you're not included in a trial. It is about protecting you. It's about having a safety net looking out for you so nothing bad happens to you. So there is that element to it. But I do also hear what you're saying, because a lot of people here have also expressed the same sorts of things where they feel like their history with HIV basically precludes them from ever really getting involved in one of these studies, because it seems like, oh, if you've once had a low CD4 count, that might exclude you from it. If you ever had a below 200, that might exclude you. And yet that's the real world. People are like that. And whatever we're working on, we want those interventions to eventually reach those people. And so we hear your complaint, but there are sorts of reasons. And I don't know if Anne or Rachel or anyone else would like to kind of chime in on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. I echo everything you said. And I think, Kate, I think we try to, both through the ACTG and at our unit in Seattle, try to have a variety of studies. And so exactly what Michael said about phase 1 studies being very particular on making sure that they're not going to cause harm to people, and in a very, very small number of people, and also making sure that they kind of have a relatively even group of people that maybe have otherwise relatively healthy or similar immune systems so that they can make sense out of 8 people's responses or 17 people's responses. At the same time, we have, I think if any of these study combinations move, show that they're very effective at producing a long remission or a successful ATI in people, then those will move into bigger studies. And then we expect in that phase 2 study that, a kind of a broader variety of people can participate. And sometimes there are, for example, one of the studies that we're doing right now, 5357, the injectable study, because that study has specific ART, including cabotegravir in it, along with the monoclonal antibodies, people also have to have, very specific, or at least a history of not having had resistance to antiretrovirals or those specific antiretrovirals to make sure that if they're on what's effectively monotherapy with cabotegravir, in addition to this neutralizing antibody, that medication will work for them. And then I'll say that we have lots of other studies that are more, I think, inclusive of other people. So the slim liver study that we talked about a couple of months ago, and the Do It study. So for people who've had excessive weight gain that are very treatment experienced, and neurocognitive studies, for example, the statin study that I believe, Tom, you mentioned you were a part of. So I think those studies are very broadly inclusive, and that would be something that we would consider to be both safe and very welcoming of people who've been living with HIV for a long time and are very treatment experienced, with the hope that these ATI studies sort of in their next iteration, once we know that they're safe and that they at least have an inkling that they work, that those would then move into people with kind of a broader range of experiences.
Okay, so refresh my memory, Rachel, please. Phase 1 study has about 50 to 100 people in it, or
usually less.
Usually smaller than that. Usually
okay.
30 or less.
Okay.
Sometimes they might be as small as 5 people.
So when looking for research do for myself, one of the things to look for would be the phase 1 or phase 2, or how many people they want to include in the study would give me a hint as to what they were in as far as the phase goes.
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. And you can also obviously look at the inclusion criteria on something like clinicaltrials.gov, or of course, I know that you've participated in studies with us before. You can always reach out to our team and say, I know you have a bunch of studies going on. Is there any that I'm eligible for? Just if you're interested in research in general without a specific one to participate in. But I think, that's true for anybody here. We welcome anybody to just reach out to us with a general question of, hey, I'd like to join in, where might I fit best?
To chime in what Rachel was saying, that's why it's important to have meetings like this, because I'm in Philadelphia, and we, as being part of the Martin Delaney Collab, I get to go to other cabs to hear what they're doing. And then we might be able to collaborate and expand. I know at the Beat, we want to expand. We want to know what other people are doing and see how we can collaborate together, which can open up to market. So keep coming to these different, this is where I go to college at, come into groups like this. When you go to one of these, you hear about a lot of different studies. Then you come back, if you are part of the community, and ask people that you know about it. That raises your voice, and it gets to open doors, because I go to with Jeff and Kareem and Michael about aging. I'm definitely interested in it. I'm a middle-aged man now, so I want to know how people are long-term survivors are doing, and if I'm able to do that by participating in meetings and encouraging those to do so. That's how we get to find a larger pool instead of pulling the same 4 people to do a study.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So Christine, I see you had your hand up again. I don't know, was it from the last time that you had your hand raised and forgot to put it down, or did you have another question?
Yeah, I had another question. I just wanted to say, because of everything that I'm hearing with the trials, like how far we've already come, And you know, like from when I started with the 12 pills in the beginning, and so as the years passed, I saw, you know, the pills get one to pill, and all the progress that they've made. And I just want to, you know, say thank you. And I'm grateful for everyone that has done these ATIs, because without them, it wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be with one pill. We wouldn't be having injections, because like Will said also, and Tom, somebody before him had to do a study. You know, it comes by trial and error, or nobody, we'd never get a cure or a vaccine or anything. So, you know, I just want to say, you know, I'm very grateful for everyone and anyone, and maybe someday there will be a trial that comes along that just because of my medicine, it'll qualify me. You know, I want to do my part. I would love to do it. I'd love to be a part of it. I mean, who knows? Maybe I could be the one next Tim Brown. I always think, you know, the expectations go up. I want things, you know, to be, you know, better than before for each generation. And whatever they're doing, I know that they've been doing a lot with CRISPRs and the genes. And I don't know if that's exactly the way they should go, but, you know, they're starting to be able to gene edit HIV right out of your DNA. So who knows? Yeah. You know, who knows in the future what's going to happen, but I do know that thanks to Will and Tom, you know, we have a better understanding of how things work, and you know, everything that's been going on, and for Corrine, I appreciate the tassel. I wish I could use it, even though it's just for ATI right now, but I wish I could use it as a trial, because I've had some situations in the last couple of weeks where I really need my levels taken a lot, you know, right now, because after the vaccine, I became detectable. So it was pretty scary, but I'm getting better. But I just want to say this meeting was great. I agree with Will. This should happen more often. I think you said we have another one in November coming up.
Yes. We'll be talking about specifically the Anchor study, and with Dr. David Abulafia and the Anchor study results. Again, if you haven't heard, basically they showed that actually screening for anal cancer helps people have better health outcomes. And so it was sort of the definitive type study results that we wanted to be able to change clinical practice, as well as maybe the insurance that's going to pay for things, making it more like how we get women get their cervix checked as a part of cancer screening.
Hey, you forgot to
so it looks like the results of this, but that's going to be November.
Don't worry about it, baby.
Okay. I appreciate it. Make sure I get that email so I know. I'm back. I wasn't doing well for the last month, but I'm back.
Cool. So let's all take a moment. And I wanted to, because we'll be ending here in about 9 minutes. And so I wanted to give one last call for questions or comments. Anyone want to say anything on our conversation that we've had tonight?
Did I hear Louise say something?
Louise?
I think I did.
No, Well, I'm sorry. No, you didn't hear me say anything, but I am here. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
No, I thought you was going to tell them about what we have going on real quick.
Yes, no, I put it in the chat. I mean, we have we're really fortunate to host an event to recognize our partners, Philadelphia Phi, Jane Scholl, and others, but the highlight is having Tony Fauci Commons share with us his insights on HIV cure research, which we're looking forward to. So we're excited about it. So if you have time and want to join, you're more than welcome.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that link, and everyone should see that in the chat if you're interested. I'll also make sure to follow up and send all the links that have been shared in the chat tonight via an email with you all tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance to click on any of the chat links tonight, I'll send them to you tomorrow. So just look for that email. If you don't get it, just bug me. So it doesn't seem like we had any sort of follow-up questions or comments. And so I wanted to let you all know that we thank you very much, William. Thank you very much, Tom, Bill, Also, I'm going to throw you in there, even though you weren't on our official list. It's so great to see you and know that you've also contributed in this way. We all salute you for not only what you did with your study and participation, but for actually making yourselves available outside of that to speak and to be proud of your sort of accomplishments enough that you are willing to come to a meeting like ours and to talk with us and answer the questions and give us an idea of you can go through these ATIs and live and thrive through that. So thank you for your examples there. Before you all go, I had a little poll that I wanted to launch, and it's just a little silly poll. And it's basically, no matter where you are in your life, if you did qualify for one of these ATI type trials or studies, would you participate? Yes or no, or you don't know? I just wanted to do a little informal poll of the people who are left. You can choose one way or the other. We'll let that populate. I just wanted to share that as an answer for the end there. We still have 16 out of about 25 people. Please take a chance, vote yes, no, maybe, I don't know, either one of them. And again, it's not whether you live with HIV or don't, or whether you qualify, just assuming that you already qualified for a study like that. Would you do it? Do you think? Right. And here I'll share with you. Here we go. I think we have everyone who's voted. There's the, can you see those results? I'm sharing them with you. So we had about 71% of the people said yes, they would. And we still had about 30% of the people saying, I really don't know. And I think that's always a wise choice. And so I just wanted to, it's not a formal poll question. I just wanted to see where everyone was in their thinking of that, and seeing what they were thinking about participating potentially in an ATI trial. Of course, the reality for each of us would be specific to our unique circumstances as well as to the studies that are coming up. But I wanted to thank you all for taking some time tonight to talk to us about your thoughts and share with us your feelings. Thank you all for taking that time and joining us here. And I appreciate seeing your faces. Gary, Larry, I miss you guys. We have to come and do something together so I can see you in person because I miss you all terribly. And I will say with that, a pleasant evening to our guests. Thank you once again for joining us. And for all of you who've attended, thank you very much. I hope you had a good evening of talking. Thank you very much, everyone. And
good night, everyone.
We'll be talking soon. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good night, Kate. Good night, Christine. See you, Karine.
Thanks to the investigators for coming and joining us.
Yes.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much for sharing, Tom and William.
Yes, thank you, everyone. It was very inspiring. Have a great night.
You all too. Take care, everyone.